In today's video, I'd like to do a little bit of a discussion talking about one poll that was just released today from Change Research, and it's showing a pretty positive sign here nationally for the progressive candidates, where you have Sanders and Warren leading the pack in first place, tied at 23 percentage points of support apiece. Now, this Change Research poll did something interesting where they asked for plurality voting, which is what we typically get in these polls as who is your first choice. But they also did approval voting, which is an interesting concept. I have some disagreements with approval voting, and I'd like to discuss that and give an alternative that I think makes a bit more sense. But essentially, with the plurality vote, we'll start with that, and then we'll go over and talk about the approval voting. So with the plurality vote, we had Warren at 23%, as well as Bernie Sanders at 23%. Joe Biden really competitive and up there at 22% in third place, followed by Pete Buttigieg, who was in fourth place at 14%. Kamala Harris, she just bowed out of the race yesterday, but she was able to bring in 4% in this one, along with Andrew Yang, also at 4%, and then the rest of the candidates at 2 percentage points or less. So that is the traditional way that we get these polls, where they just ask who is your top choice. Now with approval voting, what they do is they ask for all of the candidates that you like, so you can write down as many names as you want. And with that being the case, Elizabeth Warren leading the pack at 74% of the approval vote, followed by Sanders, who is in second at 64%, Buttigieg at 61%, and Joe Biden here at 53%, and then the rest of the field is below 50 percentage points. So now I want to do a bit of an extended discussion talking about approval voting, so why you'd want a system like this, and some shortfalls that I think it has, and an alternative that I think is actually quite a bit better. So for an approval voting system where you're able to write down the names of all of the candidates that you want to support, the reason why this makes sense is when you have so many candidates running in a primary, especially with a lot of candidates sharing the same type of proposals that they're fighting for. Let's say in a hypothetical, you have your progressive candidates and your centrist candidates, and one of those factions has a lot more candidates running than the other. Well, that means that that faction is going to split their vote up quite a bit more, which is a disadvantage to them, while the faction of the party that has less candidates running would more so able to centralize that vote behind a smaller number of candidates, which would give them the advantage. So with approval voting, it fixes that aspect of the system. Now, the big things that I do not like about approval voting is it gives an extended advantage to those individuals who have higher name recognition, and the candidates with more name recognition already have so much of an advantage built into this process. But if you add on approval voting, the more people who know you, the more likely that they are to write your name down, and that just gives you that bigger advantage than you already have. And another thing I don't like about approval voting is it doesn't allow you to differentiate the importance of the candidates and how they rank in your mind. So let's say there's maybe 5 centrist candidates that you like, and you want to cast a vote for all of them in this scenario, but maybe you like a couple of them more than the rest. Well, there's no way for you to differentiate that in the approval voting system. Now, I think the easy solution to this is ranked choice voting, because not only does it allow you to vote for a number of different candidates that you might be supporting, but it allows you to differentiate the importance of it. So let's just do a hypothetical. Let's say there's a young individual, maybe back in 2016, they were a big-time Bernie Sanders supporter, and they voted for Sanders in their primary. Let's say going towards 2020, they've learned about Andrew Yang, and maybe now Yang is their top choice. And going into the 2020 primary, they want to vote for Yang, but they're concerned that it'll just be a waste of a vote because he doesn't seem like he's going to have an excellent shot at going on and winning the nomination. So then maybe that person who now has Bernie Sanders as their second choice is going to go in and just vote for Sanders anyways, because they don't want to throw that vote away. They want to support somebody who they think has the best shot at winning. Now, ranked choice vote completely fixes this, because it allows you to vote for your number one candidate no matter what their chances to go on and win this thing. And if your candidate doesn't end up being in that upper tier of candidates that can split up the pledged delegates, well, then what they can do is go down to your second choice, and if that's somebody who's in that upper tier, then they can apply that vote. So you can show the support behind the candidate who you think is the best, but also feel like you're not throwing away your vote by casting it for somebody who's lower in the polls, as opposed to some of these other candidates that might be higher in the polls that you also like as well. So ranked choice voting fixes that. It allows you to differentiate the importance of your vote instead of just a blanket system. So that's going to wrap up this discussion that I wanted to do a bit of a rant on and go into a bit more depth, talking about approval voting, ranked choice voting, as well as the current plurality voting system that we have that tends to favor more so the candidates that are doing well in the polls and are a bit more well known. given the fact that people might not want to feel like they're throwing away their vote by casting it for somebody that's a bit lower in the polls and maybe has a little bit less of a chance. It fixes that. It's a bit more complicated of a system and would certainly cost more money to implement. And we're probably going to be stuck with plurality voting going forward, but nonetheless, it is an interesting topic to discuss and something that we can maybe aspire towards in the future. So I appreciate you guys stopping by for this video. We're probably going to get more polls coming out through the rest of the week, and as we get more so towards the end of the week, I'll make a video compiling those together and doing a bit more of a discussion about different data points that we're seeing with these recent numbers. So if you want more of this content in the future, click that subscribe button, and I hope to see you guys back here for future videos.